tell us a little bit about exactly what Play on Philly is, and how big is your staff, and how many children are you working with, and like that.
Sure. So Play on Philly, we are an out of school time music program. We work with about 300 kids. We see them on a daily basis, about 2.5 hours a day, 5 days a week throughout the school year. And then we run a 6-week summer program where we have the kids all day, roughly 8 hours a day, 5 days a week for 6 weeks in the summer. We have a staff of about 15. Half of those full-time people are on my program team that implement our activities in 4 different sites throughout Philadelphia. And then the other half, they are split among operations, fundraising, and of course my team, my executive team. So, we also produce about 25 to 30 concerts a year. And we do a lot of research on the students in partnership with Wolf Brown. And we maintain probably half a dozen partnerships with major arts and cultural and education organizations throughout the city. So we are moving our work online for the summer. We're keeping a close eye on what happens in the fall, but we're planning each trimester at a time. So in August, we'll sit back down again with all the information we have, and we'll make decisions on what our fall trimester will look like.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll do that throughout the year until we're really on the other end of both the health and the financial crisis.
And goodness knows when that will be. Yeah. So when we first entered this period in March, the school year was ongoing, correct?
Yes.
So you switched at that point to online teaching, so forth, with the children, right?
Right.
And how did they take to that? How did they respond?
Immediately our team, we we looked at it from a standpoint of how can we continue to make music in the way that we always knew in person. It's an orchestral training program for kids, starting
Right.
from kindergarten up to 12th grade. So immediately it was, thinking of a kid on one end with their instrument playing at the screen, and a
Right.
teacher on the other end with their instrument playing at the screen, hoping that we meet in the middle, this fourth wall, and magic would happen, via Zoom. And we quickly found out that that's very challenging to pull that off. There was also inequity of not all of our kids had their instruments at home. Not every kid had devices or internet access. So after a couple of weeks of that, we decided to look at our work through a different lens. And if everything that we've known for 10 years in terms of instrumental training, technical training, and we still wanted to have an impact on the kids, we started to think about, well, what if we ran kind of Sesame Street style, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood style programming? What if for our middle schoolers and high schoolers, we did something similar? However, we had them use anything they had access to. They could sing. If they had their instrument, they could play. They could tap on a table. They could tap on their body. And perhaps could we take their musical ideas and take them through a compositional process that would teach them musical literacy, and have an end product of a collective piece that they would have written with the help of our staff and performed by our teachers. Actually, every Friday, they perform for the students and the families. They'll be performing at the end of this month. We will have a virtual concert where, a mix of live content and pre-recorded content. We will have our teachers perform, I believe, the first movement of Beethoven's First Symphony for our families. So this has really kind of forced us to not just think, how do we adapt online, but how do we actually innovate? And for us, innovating meant going away from the technical instrumental training that
Hmm.
we know,
Hmm.
um, and that we teach the musical literacy.
So when you say musical literacy, you're talking about theory and things like that, or what?
Yeah, theory. We can still teach melody and harmony. We can teach about form and tempo.
Hmm.
There are a lot of really important musical concepts that the students need to learn in addition to music theory and solfege and ear training. That, we hope that when we can reunite with their instruments and reunite in an orchestra, that they might actually be ahead of the curve. Because again, that instrumental technique, we can build that back up later.
Sure. And how are the teachers responding to this? They did not realize they'd be having to perform as part of their job, correct?
Correct. Overall, I mean, the teachers have been great in adjusting. I will say, and it's all fairness to my staff, it has been more difficult for the staff to
Oh,
make the adjustments. Just because of the nature of what we do. Of course, we want to stay very close to our mission, and we ask ourselves, are we still delivering on that in this new format? And so that has been a big change, in that every 2 weeks, things are different for the organization. We hear about another funder who is coming through with relief funds we never thought were going to be there. Or we hear from another funder, hey, they can only fulfill half of their pledge for this year.
mhm.
We hear from our other partners. I mean, we're continuing to hear from health officials and our school district leaders and our governor about how long we can stay open. So we've just decided there's just a handful of things that we can control, which
Right,
is really, we can control our expenses,
right.
we can control our attitudes, we can control how much we're thinking outside of the box or how much we're just trying to stay inside of a box, and just staying very open to this could change the organization forever, and that's okay. Um, and one day, yes, we will be back in the room together. We will have that orchestral rehearsal. We'll have those live performances. That will be spectacular. It'll be magic. It'll be, special when that day arrives.
Sure.
But I don't think we should hibernate.
Part of this whole period has been about the lack of the human connection. And I'm wondering about that impact on the children, if that has changed.
Yeah, we see it a lot. And we're most worried about that lack of connection. Um, as we try to push a lot of instruction through the internet, uh,
Right.
one early misstep that we made was forgetting about how are we building community? How are we keeping the kids connected to one another? And also their teachers, who over the past 10 years have really become, good friends and really important adult figures in their life.
Right.
Um, so as we reiterate what we do this summer, we're certainly going to have more time set aside for those human connections with the kids and
Hmm.
also with the families, because at the end of the day, the parents want to see their kids engaged. They want to see them happy, excited to turn on the computer to um, participate with whatever we have to offer, not drag themselves around wanting to be there. And we
Right.
know that them being part of that community is an important part of that process. We do a combination of webinar and interactive sessions, allowing the kids to turn on their microphones, to engage, to use the chat function, to make sure that their voices can be heard, or we just check in to just ask how they're doing that day. So we do that as much as we can. And then we also have what we call hangouts, where the kids can just sign on and there's no real agenda other than to just say hello and swap stories. And that's always extremely uplifting for our staff and our teachers especially. Play on Philly, we are finishing our 10th year. When we heard about the news that we would need to shut down and suspend programs, essentially, send our staff home and so forth, we immediately started to think first about the safety of all of our team members, and quickly understood that we would need to take care of our people in the best way possible. And it was clear that our teachers were going to lose a significant amount of their income because all of their other performances and outside work was going to dry up. So I was really happy that within a week of us shutting down, we were able to give everybody that assurance. It came at a pretty hefty price tag to do that, but we knew that that was the right thing to do. The second thing that we realized is that we understood that we were beginning a marathon. This was not a sprint to get to the end of the school year or maybe get to the summer, but
Right.
we knew that we were going to be in this situation for a while and that there would be an impending recession that would coincide with the health crisis. So because of us thinking of this about, in terms of a marathon, we made lots of decisions early on, things like senior staff taking a pay cut, the rest of our staff following later and taking a pay cut. When the PPP program came around, again, because we were looking through the lens of this being a marathon, we did not apply for the funding because we knew that if we looked at the crisis in terms of 12 to 18 months, us
Right.
taking pay cuts, we would actually save 2.5 times the amount of money that the loan would give us immediately, but we would really have the flexibility not knowing what was going to happen next. As you understand, the PPP program requires you to keep your team employed throughout that time. And we understand that for every passing week, we're spending money.
Right.
So there was no guarantee we would get the money. And there's also very little guidance in how people who receive the money will get out of it and have the loan forgiven. So we did not want to take those chances. For the past 10 years, we've been able to invest $15 million in about 941 kids.
What practical advice do you have to offer those many, many arts organizations and administrators who are suffering through this period?
I can't emphasize enough about outrunning this situation. I think that we're going to be in a long-term kind of crisis mode.
Right.
And this will take a lot of strength and a lot of time and coordination. And for my colleagues, I just want to remind them that we need to understand that we have to take care of ourselves. We have to take this just a day and a week at a time, and do our very best to connect with our stakeholders that have believed in us for all this time, and our friends and our family. And that, hopefully together we can ride this out, so that we can get to that moment when we will be together in the room again, making music, and being able to share that fellowship in the flesh and not just virtually.